Can we talk about the A word, alone? Yes, that's the one. So many people I talk to, especially in the context of letting go for love and relationship, are afraid to be alone. Is that you? So listen, no judgment here. When I was stuck in a 12-year relationship going nowhere, and frankly, in all of my relationships, even the ones that lasted for a week or a month, one of the great motivators for staying was the fear of being alone. And I'm not even sure if it's fear in so much as I saw it as sort of a defining quality, like I'm alone, therefore I must be not lovable or worthy of a partner or not good enough for anybody else to want to be with, or in some way defective or doing something wrong. Because how could so many other people find love and I couldn't? My friends and my family members and all kinds of people hitching their wagons to a special someone, and there I was, time after time, alone. But you know what I'm going to say now, right? If that's where you're at, you need to let go of those ideas that being alone equals being less than, because that is just not true. Maybe you fear that being alone is a permanent condition, that you're alone now and so it shall be into forever, or at least it feels that way. After all, nothing really works out, so you always find your way back to, well, aloneness. Well, that doesn't have to be true either. Now, before I tell you what to do about that, let me tell you some of the good things about being alone. 1, you don't have to compromise with anybody else about big life choices. 2, the world is really your oyster. Yep, you don't have any obligations to another person yet, so you're pretty free to figure out who you are and what you want from life and even love. 3, you can leave the toilet seat down and anticipate that it will absolutely stay that way until you otherwise allow it to change. Isn't that awesome? Like, no accidental sinking. Sorry. 4, you can be and feel whatever and whomever you want to be and feel, whenever and however. So if you want to stay home and eat flaming hot Cheetos and watch the Real Housewives of every single city in the continental US, then have at it. Nobody is judging or forcing you to watch alien movies as a way to keep the home fires peaceful. 5, you have a safe space that's all yours, mentally, physically, and in all ways, that you can really express yourself creatively and design-wise and mess-wise and in so many other ways. You don't have to worry that somebody else is mistreating your throw pillows or not putting them back on the sofa just so. You know what I'm talking about. You can let your guard down. You can figure out what comes next. You can get a pet or take a big trip or make a big, bold move without having to worry about its impact on another person or get permission. You can be anyone you want. You can do what you want. You can embark upon whatever you darn well please. You can come home after a big day at work or at play, exhausted, and fall into that really good drooly sleep anywhere and for as long as you want, because nobody is hovering over you or trying to wake you to make dinner or taste dinner or be presentable for dinner or show up for dinner or be productive in any way, shape, or form. You are completely in charge of the remote. You can experiment with different things to figure out what's best for you without worrying about another person's needs or messing up, which is the very, very definition of experimentation, right? Like having room to make mistakes. You are just free to be. Now, for those of you who are saying, yeah, I get it. I'm tired of that, Jill. I want to share my life with another person. I am feeling you. I was there. And yet, I regret not enjoying my alone time more, because here's the thing. I spent most of that time not just fearful, but deep down inside, I was convinced that I would always be alone, that I would never find someone, even though I said I wanted it and might have said to other people, sure, it's going to happen, of course. But I never really believed it. And so I missed out on all the joy of being alone because I thought it would never end. And when you don't believe that, let's say, a massage or a facial will ever end, at a certain point, even those very pleasurable things cease to be fun. And instead, they feel like we're being held in captivity. And so instead of enjoying the moment, we're freaking out because we don't know that this is not endless. This is how I recommend approaching your single life and or the act of just being alone, not in partnership, not with anyone. And it always comes back to our beliefs, right? That's because we bring our beliefs to life in every single choice we make. And if we subconsciously believe lasting, healthy love is unavailable to us, then we're going to keep making those choices that prove us right. Because we are hardwired to look for evidence of what we think is true. And so for me, that manifested in choosing the wrong partners over and over again, who made it clear from the outset, by the way of red flags and other signals I chose to ignore, that they would never be able to give me what I wanted. And yet there I was every time, picking the same unavailable partners to go out with instead of examining why I was doing it and what my actual beliefs, conscious and subconscious, were, and pulling them together, thinking about how to revise them to get me where I actually wanted to go so all cylinders were moving forward. I feared being alone the same way some people fear going to the hospitals, that they're worried they'll never leave, when in fact, being alone was precisely what I needed to figure out who I was and why I kept making the same wrong choices and what came next. Being alone can be an incredibly fertile time with important implications for what comes after. The A word is not a dirty word. It's a reflective time that can be rich in self-discovery, of independence, of experimentation, of the joy of just being who we are, unencumbered and without obligation or responsibility for other people. It's a time to create and imagine and bask in current pleasures, knowing that the only constant in life is change and that nothing stays the same forever. We don't have to be alone forever. We have agency over what and who we bring into our lives and when. Besides, there's nothing worse than feeling alone with another person and you know I'm right. And while you think you're used to it, you shouldn't have to be used to being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Instead, ask yourself, what could your life look like outside, if you're alone outside of your current situation? Make a list of pros and cons, and then ask yourself what possibilities lie beyond. When I let go of my 12-year relationship with a really good guy who just didn't want what I did, to be alone, I knew it would hurt. I knew I'd miss him. I knew I'd be sad and cry, but none of those things lasted forever or kept me alone forever. To the contrary, I stayed along for as long as I wanted and needed. I did the work of big, wild love, which is self-love, with the intention of taking risks and thriving inside of uncertainty, that I needed to do so that I could find that right person. My goal wasn't to never be alone. It was to be happily ensconced in a relationship with someone who wanted what I did and who shared my interests and values and who had my back and was open to letting me have his. And I found it, but only after a period spent alone, dealing with the residue of what had passed. Being alone was my gift. And once I learned to relish it instead of dread it, everything changed. Now, to quote someone who watched my TEDx talk and left this great comment for me, I'm letting go, and my life would be much happier, less stressful, and free to be who I am unapologetically, which, by the way, is something you get to be when you spend time alone and then with whoever comes after, because you will choose them very differently than you would have otherwise. Being alone can be a truly magical time. What do you think?